Tonight, untold stories.
Every facility we have along the southwest border is over capacity right now.
More from the first look inside a Texas processing center for migrant children and families.
And
it seemed like he knew it was over for him.
Another emotional day in the Derek Chauvin murder trial over the death of George Floyd.
Plus, the White House unveils a massive infrastructure plan.
And a vaccine for kids.
We're going to feel the reverberation of the pandemic for at least a generation of children and teenagers.
What that means for children over a year into the pandemic lockdowns. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Never before seen footage of George Floyd today at the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Well, another very emotional day in the courtroom in Minneapolis as more eyewitnesses testified about what they saw that day.
Prosecution submitting video publicly released for the first time today, including police body cam. Footage from inside the Cup Foods convenience store shows George Floyd interacting with others. The store clerk who took a $20 counterfeit bill from Floyd that Floyd used to purchase a pack of cigarettes testified today about the chain of events before police arrived.
If I would have just not taken the bill, this could have been avoided.
So did you continue to work at Cup Foods as long as you could?
No.
Why not?
I didn't feel safe.
Hey man, okay? I'm not a bad guy, man. In the car. I'm not a bad guy.
Watching the video for the first time, Charles McMillan, a witness on the scene, broke down on the stand.
Can we stop it right here, please?
Mama,
Mr. McMillan, do you need a minute?
The court took a short break to give Mr. McMillan time to recompose. When they came back, Mr. McMillan described George Floyd's last words.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration is finally allowing cameras into a Texas border facility, and a lot coming to light as we see these images and we hear some of the stories.
That's right, Jenna. The facility is in Donna, Texas, and currently has more than 4,000 migrants, designed to hold only 250. Border Patrol agents there are sharing some of the horrific experiences of the thousands of unaccompanied minor children. CBN's Abigail Robertson has more.
With more than 18,000 unaccompanied children in federal custody, border agents are overwhelmed and haunted by the stories of the children now in their care.
The untold stories of these little ones. God knows if these kids were molested during their journey.
That's because of their treatment at the hands of drug cartels and smugglers, being paid to get the children into the U.S.
And as I got closer to her, I noticed that she couldn't speak. And I asked the medical staff what happened. And the reason she was going to the hospital because she had gotten gang raped. And the reason that she couldn't speak was because she had lost her voice in the process while she was getting raped.
Officer Escamilla says unaccompanied children are coming in droves since their parents know they won't be sent back.
We're starting to see younger and younger kids being brought over by their sponsors, by relatives, by grandparents, whoever it is in the family that is actually asking for these kids and paying the fees to smuggle these kids into the country.
In this facility in Donna, Texas, migrant children and teens are sleeping on hard floors with aluminum blankets.
Every facility we have along the southwest border is over capacity right now.
While there should only be 250 here due to the pandemic, more than 4,000 are packed in this facility.
Our facilities were never designed to hold people for longer than a couple of days, much less 8 or 9 days, which we've seen.
And not all kids are coming alone. This mother holding her 2-month-old baby says she's fleeing poverty and violence in Guatemala. Texas Rangers rescued a 6-month-old baby girl they say was thrown into the river by smugglers who also assaulted her mother. This just days after news broke of a 9-year-old girl dying while trying to cross the river with family.
All the government officials tell us they are doing the best they can, but they're being overwhelmed by sheer numbers.
President Joe Biden tapped Vice President Kamala Harris to take the lead on stemming migration, an issue she discussed with faith leaders at the White House Wednesday.
We have to ask, why do people leave that And usually they leave because there is a lack of opportunity or it is just not safe.
The White House is also clarifying this week that Vice President Harris is in charge of tackling the root causes of why people are leaving their countries and not overseeing the major issue of the escalating situation at the border. Reporting from Virginia, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Abigail. And here now for more, veteran Washington journalist Ray Suarez. Ray, it's good to have you with us this evening. Let's start right there. If Vice President Harris is not in charge of the border, who is, and how does the White House handle this, given that, it's a crisis that probably no one wants to be the face of?
Any White House would be struggling to contain and protect a human flow like this one. Vice President Harris is going to own this policy as much as President Biden, as much as the cabinet secretaries in the departments of responsibility. And it's pulling down Joe Biden's approval rating. They're going to have to handle it. They will in the coming months. This is not the first time we've been here as a country. This is not the first time we've had to handle a crisis like this. There's going to be a give at some point.
Ray, speaking of approval ratings, an NPR Marist poll shows more than half of all Americans disapprove of President Biden's handling of immigration. Ray, politically, is there any way for him to get out from under this?
Well, the traffic coming to the border will slow down. It usually does. And when it does, they will be able to digest this large flow. It's a tough spot to be in. To push them back into Mexico would create a different kind of crisis. This belongs to whatever president has to handle it. And this will belong to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for as long as it lasts. That's just the truth of it. When it begins to subside a little later in the year, the United States will have a system in place for processing these people. It happened to happen at a time when the administrations were changing hands, and that's a tough time for any policy challenge to come along.
Well, let's talk about the George Floyd trial happening in Minneapolis right now. In the trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin, another very emotional day, as we heard, Ray, from more eyewitnesses who saw Floyd die. What struck you today?
Well, these stories that are coming, as they have now for a couple of days, right from the moment, right from ground zero, where George Floyd was laying on the ground, where first Derek Chauvin, but then later other officers are pinning him to the ground. These are very emotional accounts. The emergency medical technician who said that she wanted to help and was kept from doing so. The man whose phone call set into motion all these this entire chain of events. Think of the burden on that gentleman. It's going to be, I think, even more closely watched as the days of testimony rolled out. We're just getting started. We've got a long way to go. And as happens again and again in blockbuster trials like this, by the time we get closer to the end, a lot more Americans are going to be paying attention and know the details of this case.
Indeed. All right, Ray Suarez, thank you so much. It's good to have you this evening.
Thanks, Ray. Well, tonight, the president is laying out his vision to massively invest in the nation's infrastructure.
That's right. It's a multi-trillion-dollar plan that's raising a lot of eyebrows on both sides of the political aisle. CBN News White House correspondent Eric Phillips joins us with a closer look. Eric?
Well, that's right. This is a plan that has a long, hard road ahead of it. It already has gotten opposition all the way around from the left, the center, as well as the right. Still, the president is forging ahead on a priority that his administration says cannot wait. Now, here are some of the major highlights of that plan and what's causing angst on both sides of the aisle. The proposal includes $621 billion to modernize transportation infrastructure, $400 billion to help care for the aging and those with disabilities, $300 billion to boost manufacturing industry, and $213 billion on housing, as well as $100 billion to expand broadband access. Now, progressives say all that is not enough. Moderates want other concessions before they sign on to it, and conservatives just say no. But Biden has a vision. Listen to what he said during his presidential press conference.
Rebuild the infrastructure, both physical and technological infrastructure of this country, so that we can compete and create significant numbers of really good paying jobs.
The speech is really about his vision for creating jobs, good paying union jobs, and really investing in the industries of the future. But he thinks it's responsible, it's the responsible thing to do, to propose a way to pay for that over time. So, and he also believes that there's more that can be done to make the corporate tax code fair.
They're taxing you coming and going now under this bill, and it's going to have also very negative effects. This is going to be one of the most expensive spending bills in American history, on top of the most expensive bill in American history that we just passed less than a month ago. So this is...
A group of top Republicans has come together to form a coalition to push back against what they believe would be unavoidable tax hikes under Biden's plan. Meanwhile, the president will hold his first cabinet meeting tomorrow, a day after one of the biggest speeches of his first 100 days in office. And in the coming days, the president will lay out what he's calling a human infrastructure plan, including social programs like child care and health care. John and Jenna.
The president making a lot of moves there. Thank you, CBN's Eric Phillips. Well, here with us now is Joel Griffith, the Heritage Foundation Research Fellow. Joel, welcome back to Faith Nation. We just heard Eric talking about this, Joel. The first part of the plan focuses on roads, bridges, rail lines, as well as clean energy. What can you tell us about the rest of it?
Well, the rest of it actually amounts to the vast majority of this package. Only a small fraction goes towards the items that you mentioned, such as freeways and airports. The vast majority of this is really to implement a socialist far-left agenda. Buried within this plan are actually hundreds of billions of dollars to reorient our entire energy system. This is really a Green New Deal through a back door. And far from making this economy more prosperous, is actually going to take us down the road of Western Europe. And for all the accolades Western Europe gets, we need to realize and recognize that people in Germany, the typical family earns $10,000 less a family than here in the United States. And that's in large part because their system is so centralized from the capital. And that's exactly what this infrastructure package would do. It would shift power away from you on the state and local level and put hands in the hands of DC bureaucrats and politicians.
You know, some will say that this is a job creator, where they're taking jobs from the energy sector, say, those people can go work on, these new infrastructure jobs. Do you agree with that? Is this a job creator, Joel?
That's patently untrue. We're fortunate in this country to have some of the lowest unemployment rates in the world. In fact, they're usually far lower than our competitors across Europe. And that's in large part because we have a free market system. When you take away trillions of dollars out of our economy, put it into DC, and then redistribute to favored business interests, politicians might be able to claim some credit for some very visible projects. But that doesn't make up for the fact that you'll have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs lost elsewhere, because you're taking control from the hands of the free market and you're putting that power of the purse into the hands of Washington, DC. And that's going to result not just in higher taxes, but it's actually going to result in higher prices on items, especially in the energy sector, which if we go down the road forcing our sector to rely on wind turbines, for instance, we're going to be paying a much higher cost to heat our homes, to produce our goods, and to travel.
Yeah. Well, we saw what happened in Texas this winter when they had to rely on those wind turbines. We'll see what happens. Joel Griffith with the Heritage Foundation, thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll be back after the break.
Having sex before you're married is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire. Monday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel. The Global Lane takes you around the world providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Thursday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
That is the level of protection the Pfizer vaccine gives to kids ages 12 to 15 against COVID-19. The small but promising study into the Pfizer vaccine's effectiveness in kids giving new hope to parents. Today in the White House COVID-19 news briefing, CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky said the coronavirus was the third leading cause of death in the U.S. last year.
In 2020, about 3.3 million deaths occurred in the United States overall. This represents a 16% increase in deaths from 2019. COVID ranked as the third leading cause of underlying cause of death after heart disease and cancer.
Well, as the pandemic spread across America 1 year ago, much of the nation shut down, including schools and sports activities.
Yeah, the result, a mental health crisis for a lot of kids. Charlene Aaron shows us how one group is enlisting churches to help kids re-enter their communities.
From disorganized virtual learning to no activities like proms and after-school sports, COVID-19 has disrupted basic rights of life for this young generation, leaving many with mental and behavioral issues that could linger well after the virus is gone.
I think about the price so many of my grandkids and your kids are going to pay for not having had the chance to finish whatever it was. That graduation where you didn't get to walk across the stage, I think they're going through a lot, these kids.
The president isn't alone in that assessment.
It's awful, and it's universal. There's an increased incidence of anxiety disorders, depression, suicidal ideation. Kids often don't know how to manage the anxiety that they feel.
An impact psychiatrist, Dr. Daniel Amen, says isn't going away anytime soon.
We're going to feel the reverberation of the pandemic for at least a generation of children and teenagers.
Lockdowns and social restrictions have basically crippled many youth sports organizations, leaving activities in some states canceled for the past 10 months. While some youth sports are finally starting back up, a new study reveals 3 out of 10 kids won't be returning to the lineup.
The difficulty has been there. We know that when kids are playing video games at home instead of out exercising and interacting with other kids, it can be detrimental to their health.
The group Upward Sports helps local churches set up sports leagues in their communities. Executive Director Kevin Drake told CBN's Prayer Link how sports often serve as a physical and emotional outlet.
Kids need structure, and we know that when kids are together and in organized sports, that it brings that discipline and structure for them.
Drake emphasizes a key part of the equipment list.
Our number one goal is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with people who need it. And so You put the power of sharing the gospel with the ability for churches to partner in their communities to bring kids back together for sports.
Meanwhile, with COVID vaccinations happening across the country, President Biden is pushing to reopen public schools in the next few months. Yet, like with much of the pandemic, it is unclear when youth sports or anything else will return to normal. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Wednesday at 3 on the CBN News Channel.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Welcome back. Tomorrow marks an important deadline for the Yazidi people, a religious minority living in northern Iraq.
A security agreement made without their input requires the only armed forces they trust to pull out of the region or risk invasion by Turkey. Jennifer Wishon explains.
Once again, the Yazidi people find themselves at the center of a potentially explosive situation with no input about their future. 6 months ago, there was this Sinjar security agreement, and now we're facing this very important deadline tomorrow, April 1st. Take us back 6 months ago to what exactly was agreed and what could possibly happen tomorrow in this region.
Sure. So on October 9th, the federal government in Baghdad and the Kurdistan regional government, they signed an agreement that we are calling the Sinjar deal, an official agreement that would settle some of the security problems in the area. The U.S., the UN, France welcomed it, but the Yazidi community specifically and others on the ground in Sinjar denounced it because they weren't included in any of the negotiations. But on April 1st, all the armed militias are supposed to have pulled back.
And who are these militias?
I have a list right now of 17 different armed forces and several Yazidi forces. And this is one of the things that the U.S. Commission is most concerned about. One of them would be called the YBS. And they were set up by the PKK, which is the Kurdistan Workers' Party that had a long history of fighting with Turkey. And so Turkey's made it clear that the PKK, if they don't leave, that they're going to invade. And so, but what we know that means is the YBS that are associated with the PKK are genocide survivors. They're Yazidis who are on the ground, and they're very reluctant to pull back because they're afraid that if they do, that there won't be anyone to protect the Yazidi community if something was to happen like it did in 2014 when ISIS came.
So we have a situation where about 6 years ago, the Yazidi people faced genocide at the hands of ISIS.
Right.
Approximately 6 months ago, a security deal was made about their homeland without their input.
Right.
And now they are being asked to basically pull back from their homeland with the assurance that Iraqi forces will protect them. But they know from history that that was not the case when ISIS was killing their mothers and fathers and enslaving their sisters into sex trafficking. So this feels like a pretty dire situation for them.
It is, and it's important, and I love how you frame that we look at it through their eyes. We're hopeful, and we've heard, we were just today that there isn't an imminent invasion tomorrow or military action, that the Iraqi government is hopeful that they can have a negotiated solution. So we're still calling out and making sure people understand when they're looking at this situation, these unnamed armed forces can sound so ominous. But when you think about the fact that so many of them are Yazidi genocide survivors, and that we need to approach this delicately.
This feels very much like a powder keg. And as you say, with this vulnerable religious minority right at the center once again.
Exactly.
Nadine, thank you.
Thanks so much for covering this important issue.
Coming up, celebrating a White House tradition and serving those in need one egg at a time. See this special Easter tradition up next.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Superbook fans, here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally tonight, a time-honored tradition at the White House.
That is right. Today, and just in time for Easter, the American Egg Board unveiled the 2021 First Lady's commemorative egg. This year's egg features an image of the White House and D.C.'s cherry blossoms. And while eggs are a cornerstone of Easter and Passover celebrations, egg farmers wanted to make sure everyone has access to get their nutritional value, pledging to donate more than 90 million eggs to food banks across the country. That's a lot of eggs.
Yeah, good on them. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us this evening.
We'll see you next time.